Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to another episode of Ask Rob and Rob, a show all about reducing uncertainty in the world. You ask your property questions and we come up with some answers for you. We've got a couple of great questions in today, so we'll hear those just after a quick recap of how you can ask your own.
Yep, you can call in on 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. And you just leave an answer phone message. We're not going to pick it up, don't worry, it won't be scary. Just leave a message that way. And you can even have a second or third though if it doesn't go right first time round. Or you can go to propertyhub.net/ask and leave a message there. And again, you don't have to be perfect first go. But if you are, wonderful. But you know what is wonderful? When we get great questions in. And this week is no exception to great questions. First up, we've got a question from Steve.
Hi Rob and Rob, it's Steve from London here. Just wanted to kick off by saying thank you so much for your podcast and all the free advice you give. It's just been so helpful over the last few years to me, so I really, really appreciate it. My question is about new builds. I get that they're brand new and that's obviously a good thing, but I've seen some that are they look quite overpriced compared to others in and around similar areas. So anyway, it would just be good to know your view on the value of new builds and if you are better off getting a new build or if you're better off getting something that's a bit older.
Steve, great question. You know what? New builds can be overpriced, but so can any property, whether it's new, 10 years old or 100 years old. Any property can be overpriced or overvalued. But the same rules apply. And it's so simple to establish whether a property is overpriced or not. You do your research. Now, when you look at a new build, and let's just say it's a two-bed house. You look at a two-bed house, you look at other two-bed houses in the area. Now, the first thing you need to remember is not all two-bed houses are created equal. A two-bed run-down terrace is not the same as a brand new, light, spacious two-bed new build. One will need a lot of work and the other one is ready to live in. So there are differences. You've got to make sure you compare like with like. But the great thing about new build developments is there might be a way for you to do this. And it's really easy if the development is a large development. A lot of the large national developers, their sites are huge. They're not 10, 20 houses. They could be 100, 200, 1,000. And that means that multiple properties have already sold at the same spec and standard. And you can check to see what they have sold for. You can't get a better comparable. If all the properties in that area have sold for the price that you think it's worth, then you've got the comparables because it's not only you that now thinks that they're worth that, but actually multiple surveyors and lenders have also signed off at those values. So you've had the experts give their view. So new build property can be overpriced. It could also be underpriced. And it could be at price. It just depends. But it's not guaranteed to be any of those at any point. You have to do your research.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are two main reasons why this myth about new build property being overpriced sticks around. Firstly is what Rob's just said. Often people don't compare like with like. You can look at a brand new, beautiful two-bed flat with loads of facilities and compare it to a rundown ex-council flat just over the road and think, oh, well, that's more expensive. It must be overpriced. But no, it's a better property. Therefore, its price can be justified. The other reason is that new builds are sometimes overpriced. And often this is something you'll see when there are rental guarantees involved. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, and people are sometimes surprised, I think, that we're quite negative on properties that come with a rental guarantee. So it'll say something like, buy this property and for the first 5 years, we'll pay you a guaranteed yield of 6% or something like that. And that'll sound brilliant. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, the reason you wouldn't do that is that you are funding the guarantee because you're paying too much in the first place. So effectively, what's happening most of the time is they'll inflate the asking price, you'll pay that money over, and then they'll gradually pay some of that money back to you in the form of a guarantee if the property is empty or if the rent doesn't reach the level it should have done. That's problematic because you're paying too much for the property in the first place, and when that period ends and the guarantee is no longer in place, the rent then drops down to its true level and the return that you're getting is less than you expected. So it's critical that you do always do your research. When you compare a new build property to other properties in the area, including new builds and existing stock, when you suspect that it is overpriced, you'll often find that it is one of these developments with incentives, with guarantees that are overpriced. Not always, but it is a pattern to look out for. But as Rob said, if you do your research every time, then you won't end up overpaying, and you won't miss out by writing off a whole class of property because of this new build myth.
So there you go, Steve, a myth busted. Next up, we've got a question from Brogan, who's been saving.
Hi, Rob and Rob. It's Brogan from South Wales. I'm a 23-year-old graduate engineer. When I started my graduate job, I opened a lifetime ISA, so I wanted to invest £4,000 a year to help me buy my first property. Since then, I've started listening to podcasts, and I want to buy a property to let to generate some income. The terms and conditions of a lifetime ISA mean you can't buy your first property to let. You have to buy it to live in it. Do you have any advice of how you can sort of get around that issue? Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Brogan. So a lifetime ISA, for anyone who doesn't know, is an account that you can open when you're over 18 but under the age of 40. You can put in £4,000 each year until you're 50 years old. And then when you want to buy your first house, the government will add a 25% bonus, which means that they're effectively putting a load of money towards the purchase of your property, which is not a bad deal. The issue with that from an investor's point of view is they're pretty firm about the fact that you cannot use it to buy an investment property. It has to be a property that you want to live in. So Brogan, the bad news is you can't really get around it. You have to buy the property for you to live in, otherwise they're not going to sign off on it and give you the money. However, they are aware that circumstances change. So although you do need to move into the property, if circumstances change in the future, they're not going to try to make the money back off you. So say you live there for a couple of years and then you need to move away for work, or you get married or start a family and you need somewhere bigger, or there's some other kind of change of circumstances. In those circumstances, as long as a reasonable amount of time has passed, you're not doing it after 6 months, it's clearly not some scheme that you'd been cooking up from the beginning, they're not going to try to claim that money back from you. So can you get around the rules and use a lifetime ISA to buy an investment property? No. But you can use it to buy your own home, and when you're buying your own home, give some thought to its rental potential in the future. See how it would stack up as a buy-to-let, as well as being somewhere you want to live, because then you can buy the property, and at some point in the future, you can go and buy your own new residence, and that property becomes part of your rental portfolio. Happy days.
Happy days indeed. And we're going to have happy days ahead because we've got the Property Podcast returning on Thursday. And of course, we'll be back next week for Ask Rob and Rob. So until then, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.